Welcome back. We're going to be moving on to page 100 in your textbook, and we're looking at assimilation first, which is that we want to become part of the dominant culture. In terms of a passive way, what the co-cultural group can do is try to fit in and try to be accepted by the dominant group. They can emphasize they have a lot of things in common. I'm not that different to you. They can also self-monitor their behavior, be careful what they say about the organization as well, to try not to offend anyone of those that are in power, avoid any controversy that might be there. And this strategy does have both, benefits and costs. So this will be in a passive way. This is what they could do. In terms of examples, they do have a few examples here, such as don't try to make any waves. They might insist that they may keep quiet when they hear offensive or non-inclusive remarks about their own culture as well. And this is going to have costs to their own cultural group as well. They may also experience a lowering of self-esteem due to the feeling that they cannot be themselves, they cannot be authentic. In addition to this kind of strategy can foster unhealthy communication and climate, and it's also going to reinforce the dominant group's social and political power. Okay, so this would be a passive way to join the dominant group. Let's look at the assertive assimilation. Assertive assimilation, which is to be a bit more balanced, is to downplay your co-cultural differences, promote harmony in the existing structures that's given there, not giving priority to the other's needs. I'll try to fit in, but I have to let people know how I feel from time to time. So that is kind of giving a little bit more of a balanced sort of thing, which is that I'll try to fit in, but I also can't really give up too much myself, and I have to let them know that sometimes that remark, it wasn't necessary, or this is what you mean by this culture because I am part of this culture, for example. These strategies may promote an us versus them mentality as well. Many people find it very difficult to sustain them for long, which is that because you're trying to fit in this sort of way, it might separate you from your other culture. Eventually, the co-cultural member might experience burnout from trying to balance both cultures at the same time. The last one is to aggressively try to fit in. This is when you're really trying to fit into the dominant cultural group. You will disassociate that you are not like your co-cultural group at all. You might mirror the behavior of the dominant group. You will self-ridicule those of the co-cultural group. You will describe them in terms of like, oh, that's so typical that they might do this. It has a lot of cost to do this to your co-cultural group. So these individuals will find themselves constantly negotiating their position of the dominant group because they'll self-isolate and isolate themselves from the co-cultural group there. The next section is to try to adapt, which is to accommodate the strategy in firstly a non-assertive way. Hopefully we understand the section so far. Remember to write down notes as you're going along. A passive or non-assertive way of adapting to the group is to emphasize that you want to blend in with the dominant group in a sort of, tactile way. Strategies could include increasing visibility, dispelling stereotypes so they don't exist, which is to say that even though you want to fit in, you also don't want there to be any sort of stereotypes to that. You want them to learn. So given a good example here, a white female manager might point out that she isn't particularly good friends with the other white female in the organization. Just because both workers are minorities doesn't mean they'll be good friends. The potential benefits of both dominant and co-cultural group are obvious. In this case, the co-cultural member is gently educating her colleagues and helping to change stereotypes to the co-cultural group. In this strategy, the co-cultural member can also influence group decision-making, showing loyalty to larger organizational goals as well. And then they give quite a bit of more examples there as well, influencing decision-making, fulfilling, she doesn't fulfill the stereotypes. And in this way, the orientation may be criticized by others for being more aggressive in trying to change dominant structures because you're trying to always educate the dominant group about the co-cultural group. Assertive accommodations to try to strike balance between co-cultural and dominant group. So just to go back a little bit, this might come across as a little bit more on the assertive aggressive side, but you're gently trying to educate the other side about your culture or your ethnicity or sexual orientation and so on. And then for assertive accommodation, trying to have a balance between the two involving communicating self, doing intra-group networking, trying to more forcefully educate others, maybe by workshops and so on. African Americans may share information about themselves with their co-workers, educate others about phrases that are offensive, such as working like a slave. Or gay colleagues may educate co-workers about how they feel excluded when so much of straight people's conversations focuses on heterosexual relationships and assumes that everyone is straight, and so on. So trying to do a little bit more of, not I suppose forceful, but a bit more of a balance of that education spectrum rather than passively. And then in terms of trying to adapt aggressively, this is when you're really trying to become part of it and trying to promote those, changes. The co-culture group might maybe seem your strategy is very confrontational and self-promoting. And this will also reflect a genuine desire to work with and not against the dominant group members. They give an example here. It's one a colleague of ours used the strategy in consistently reminding our department that affirmative action goals have to be integrated into the mission of the department and not seen as a separate goal. In which case, people could compartmentalize their actions and only sometimes work for affirmative action. Similarly, a colleague with disability consistently reminds the office staff that the facilities need to be more accessible. Mailbox can't be reached, doors do not automatically open, and bathrooms do not accommodate the wheelchairs, and so on. So this is trying to, in a bit more of an aggressive manner, try to adapt, but try to also, put out there that these things are out there that, you need help with. The next section we're going to move on to is separation. Now, the co-culture group would rather separate. They can do this in a non-assertive way, which is to say that trying to move away is a part of our everyday life. They want to maintain the separation quite like in an easy sort of going manner, try to maintain that simply just by avoiding interaction with the dominant group whenever possible. They also say that homosexual people use orientation may spend their social time with other people of their culture group as well. In South Africa, people of the same ethnic culture often still sit together during lunch. So this is just to separate yourself and spend time in the same co-cultural group that you're a part of. In this sense, we could see it as birds of a feather flock together. In an assertive manner, there will now be a conscious choice to try to maintain space between the two. You could also, they say in terms of communication practices, such as stressing strengths and embracing the stereotypes, trying once again to communicate self and intergroup networking, that you'd want to assert separation, and promote co-cultural unity and self-determination to implement these as well. So it's saying here that you will try your best because that you have the differences to separate yourself. In an aggressive manner, you could have strategies that could attack and sabotage others. This is obviously going to be criticized for those who want to use assimilation accommodation strategies. But in this sense, we're trying to, move away completely, which might not be healthy at all. They also say by using attacks by the dominant group that they would have used. In this example, we have more examples in the textbook that you can make use of, and you can always read in your own time at the bottom of page 101, and they also have a pop culture spotlight, little information there. Okay, we can move now on to the next section, which is moving between languages, multilingualism in the next video clip.